I'm just going to share my screen again. And what I'm going to do is just run through just a wee bit about adventure tourism and the opportunities and some of the trends sort of within Dumfries and Galloway. Business Tourism Solutions, we were fortunate enough to win a bit of work last sort of July, August time, and we've been spending quite a lot of time working with Visit Scotland, Sail Scotland and Wild Scotland on the development of an outdoor tourism strategy for the Scottish nation. And some of the things we've gleaned from that are coming through in terms of where the opportunity I think is going to lie in the future. Not trying to teach you to suck eggs here, but obviously in terms of adventure travel, there's a number of components that tend to be the drivers in terms of the consumer. It's not necessarily always just about the walking or the cycling. People tend to immerse themselves in other experiences within a destination and enjoy part of the culture, enjoy the nature, enjoy the food and drink. And that's just a definition there that's been come from the UNWTO sort of secretary. In terms of, like, you'll know this yourselves, in terms of the way venture tourism is developed, there's obviously, these are sort of classifications that are sort of out there in terms of soft adventure, hard adventure, and sort of specialized adventure, which obviously covers a range of things. And I think one of the challenges is, how do you define what is adventure tourism? It does cover a lot of different things and a lot of sort of subsets to that. I think one of the things that have definitely happened in the last 2 years after COVID is there's been a sort of slight change in the dynamic in terms of the market, in terms of people looking to try and do things outdoors and experience things for the first time, but also with some of the mental health challenges and well-being challenges that people have been locked up. I think a lot people have sort of latched onto that in terms of, you know, mindfulness retreats or forest bathing. We've been working with a company in the Highlands that does forest bathing. So there's like a number of emerging opportunities, as well as just the growth in the sector, traditionally speaking at the moment. And we all know the types of things that people are looking to in terms of when they have their tourism activity, in terms of adventure. And a lot of these assets do exist within Dumfries and Galloway. So whether it is, you know, nature photography, doing the walking, getting on your bike and exploring the wilderness that way, getting involved in farm tours and learning about farming is quite a big, because there's a lot of agriculture in the south of Scotland. That's like a big bit that plays into that, and they're offering experiences that fit into that sort of spectrum. And obviously things about learning about food and drink and going to learn how to cook food and doing tasting classes on the softer side. But again, it's immersing yourself in the local culture and the local produce. Obviously, I've just sort of alluded to there in terms of what happened with post-COVID, and a lot of stuff came out in terms of some of the research that we did with Insights 56, that there were different markets opening up, and they were basically alluding to sort of different needs in terms of the way the world had started to change. And some of the things that were becoming different drivers there that you're probably starting to be aware of in your own businesses. A lot of businesses, because they weren't able at the time to actually offer the sort of the experience live because of COVID, some businesses started to create virtual solutions and started to use that as a sort of marketing tool to sort of engage with potential customers before things opened up again. Companies like Amazon did it, and other organizations were quite sort of slick at trying to just create their experiences online. Obviously, the COVID thing had a massive impact in people's like hygiene and feeling safe in a hygiene environment. That's not been non-negotiable for the last couple of years. It'll be interesting to see, I think, what happens in the next sort of 12 months, as obviously things have started to sort of be relaxed a bit more. You still see people wearing masks. I'm involved with a B&B here. We still have like hand sanitizers and things like that, because I think there's maybe an expectation that consumers are still looking for these types of things. People were looking to get out of the city, that big pent-up demand that they talk about, and getting away from crowds. Contactless services basically grew, you know, exponentially. In fact, the tech world grew in the last 2 years. Some of the sort of the research has indicated it's grown tenfold in the last 2 years in terms of what it would have been to achieve in the next 10 years. It's just gone crazy in terms of what people expect. And people were eager to get outside and start becoming physically active. some of the top trend adventure activities that we've sort of highlighted there that have come through from some research that's been done, a lot of them obviously again are back in D&D. So we've got hiking, trekking and walking, wellness focused activities, the upsurge on the sort of paddle boarding that you're doing in Moffat. I mean, that's just like that wasn't there 2 or 3 years ago, and it's appeared in the landscape and it's really taken off, and a lot of people are investing in that sort of infrastructure. We've got a great cycling region, and obviously photography, wildlife and nature is a real strong driver in this part of the world as well. I think what I'm trying to say with this slide, it's a massive opportunity in terms of the value it's placed within the sort of Scottish economy. I mean, tourism itself is embedded in the fabric of our life. The adventure bit of that plays into a large extent as well in terms of these sort of big economic things in terms of jobs. The cycling and leisure markets obviously significant and well, and walking significant. And I think in the last year there was a recognition that with the work that we did with the outdoor tourism strategy was that there's an increasing recognition through the tourism groups that were put up and getting links into government to actually appreciate that this sector has got quite a big role to play in terms of the recovery. And you know, it is different from golf, and golf gets quite a lot of its own support, but it has got a massive market opportunity going forward. The outlook for 2022, we did a lot of research with Insight 56, and I think that's going to be made available soon on a portal through Wild Scotland. But the essence of that was that the demand for doing things outdoors is going to continue to be very high. Scotland is a perceived destination that has got the right offer in terms of the experiences. It's got the scenery, and we've got all the attributes. Now, there's a good friend of ours that we've been working quite closely with, a guy called Peter Syme. I don't know if you've heard of him or linked in with him on LinkedIn. Quite very insightful individual. So these were some of the sort of key headlines that were sort of starting to come through with comment from after the sort of post-pandemic. Demand is high. And now I know that from our experience of delivering a similar program in the Highlands and Islands, pandemic through the first lockdown, there was, I think, a 6-week window where it got really busy, but it got too busy and it was actually crazy. And a lot of the companies couldn't actually cope with demand. Last year, it was a bit more manageable and demand was high. And some of the operators that I personally know and other people have been working with had some of their best level of customer and revenue generation that they'd had in the life of their business. And again, it was encouraging for the sector because obviously financially it had just been so damaged with what happened through lockdown. So it was great for the sort of tills to be ringing. One of the underlying themes that have come out, and we're talking about this with yourselves, is in terms of the tourism sector. It's all about consumers looking for experiences. And that's what you guys are already doing that. The adventure sector is actually like at the edge of giving people these experiences and giving people the opportunity to try things new or to do things. And it's that relationship you have with yourself or your employees or your guides that people just remember. So I think we're well positioned in terms of looking at what we've got, but there's also opportunities to build on what you've got, look at collaborating together in terms of giving that added value experience and linking things together. Consumers are still looking for flexible T's and C's. It's an individual decision for your business to think about in terms of how you book and how you then refund if things don't go to plan. But I think hopefully we've turned a corner pandemic wise in terms of the world seems to be sort of starting to sort of move in the right direction again. Consumers with anything, they're looking for value and quality. You'll all be aware of what's been happening in terms of the cost base. I know with other businesses involved in it, it's been quite challenging in terms of upward wage inflation with staff costs. Obviously, we all know what's happening with energy. It's going completely in the wrong direction and going up in sort of quantum leaps, supply chain challenges as well in terms of prices. So just be aware of your pricing point and don't be fearful of pricing your experience that is good value for money, but a lot of people tend to always think maybe they're too expensive. It's not about thinking you're too expensive. It's about what are you offering, but also making sure that you're getting your margin that you need. So don't be fearful of pricing appropriately for what you're offering. The demand, I think last year was very much driven by the staycation market, which we're all, and that's both within Scotland and England, depending on how the sort of the rules changed and markets opened up. The returning international market, there's a lot of stuff out there with different sort of predictions about what's going to happen, but I think it's starting to sort of drip feed in again. I know that I was up in Angus a couple of weeks ago, and the place was rammed with American golfers. So that market's returned, and I know a number of other organizations who are actually, where they've had long-term relationships with their customers from America and Canada, they've started to come back now that they're allowed to come back. So there's little pockets of the return again, and hopefully we start to see that sort of increase over the next 2 or 3 years and get back to sort of pre-pandemic levels, which is obviously great because they tend to stay longer and spend a wee bit more. Core messages that are probably coming out as well is very fundamentally around the whole environmental and sustainability question. And I just think the world has sort of shifted slightly now in terms of it's more in the conversation, it's more in the narrative, more in people are putting it on their websites in terms of what they're either doing as a business to try and be more sustainable, or how they can create an experience with their visitors who come into the destination where they feel that they can maybe doing something to give something back. So whether that's litter picking, etc., there's quite a lot of initiatives like that starting to appear. So I think optimistic outlook for 2022. Target audience for the UK. I'm not going to sort of labour in this. This is the sort of thing that comes from Visit Scotland and UK and Ireland in terms of the sort of profile of your different types of customers are called adventure seekers. Sometimes these sort of things sort of get, what does that really mean? But that's your sort of target market. The market, obviously, in the UK, we've got opportunities with the international market as well returning. The drivers for there tend to be the normal run that we know what they are. It's France, Germany, Holland, Spain, Italy, and the Nordics. And that's the sort of the profile. They're called buzz seekers. Sometimes I get a wee bit frustrated with all these sort of funny things. But so in terms of targeting international visitors, and I've probably noticed in the last few weeks that there are more foreign cars around now, which is great to see. D&G, I think we've got a fantastic point of difference from the point we're sort of quiet. We're still undiscovered and we're definitely off the beaten track. The challenge has been historically for a number of years to get the visitor to turn left or turn right, whether it was D&G or the Borders. I've spent a wee bit of time here recently and worked down here a few years ago. And if I forgot just how beautiful a part of Scotland this is, it really has got all the assets. It's got the products and experiences, and I think it's just all about putting it on the map. And I know we'll hear a wee bit about that from SSDA with Ross. We're proximity to all the big cities. I think there's a surprise when people arrive here because they go, oh, wow, I didn't know you this and I didn't know you that. So a wee bit of the myth busting stuff. And we're rich in adventure and heritage. Sorry, infrastructure. Yeah, sorry, I'm not great natural habitats. We've got excellent sort of providers. We've got great places to stay. We've got lots of fantastic places to eat and drink. We've got obviously the outdoor access code where you can move around. So when you add all these things together, it's like, wow, we've got it all. So let's get it on the map and let's sort of start bringing these people in. I've just set up a B&B recently, and one of the things we're trying to drive is it's not about a one-night stay. It's about come and stay 2 or 3 nights. So we've sort of tweaked the rooms so that one room's a one night, but 2 rooms are 2 nights minimum. Because it is about trying to get people to sort of slow down and increase the dwell time and just not rush away. You know, not rush away up to the Highlands. Stay a wee bit longer in D&G, I think it's a message. These are just some of the challenges I think we've got in terms of it is undiscovered. We've some challenges with transport links, and within the sector, maybe there's a bit of a fragmented approach in terms of lots of small businesses and how do you cohesively really work together. And hopefully this program starts to look at accelerating that. We're obviously, this region's competing with other bits of Scotland. It's also competing with like the Lake District in North Wales. So it is all about making sure that destination-wise, that the messages go out to basically make it to make it attractive and enable us to compete on a level playing field with these other parts of Scotland. I'm not stealing Ross's thunder here. You may mention this, but this is a bit of work that SSDA did in terms of the travel time, and they've come up with a number of sort of different market segments there. But I think Ross is going to come on and have a wee chat about that. So lots of opportunities, I think, going forward. The research that came from the insight work we did when it goes live, it'll be great to actually share that with you, because it was actually broken down into 30 different activities, and it was profiled with all the sort of demographics and all the information you need to start looking at your customers and how you target your customers through sort of digital technologies and using these as channels to market now. So yeah, I think, you know, great opportunities for the sector going forward. I think that might be sort of me. Key takeaways: it's not just about the venture, they're coming for the mix of the culture. They want to obviously participate in some physical activity, and that experience is at the heart of it. I think we've all heard about the importance of tourism and adventure tourism to Scotland's economy and communities, which again is becoming a big important part of like how businesses operate and how they operate within communities, especially what happened with all, you know, a couple of years ago when people just arrived in communities and they were overwhelmed. The facilities weren't correct. People didn't really know what they should be doing, and they created quite a lot of chaos with litter and waste, etc., etc. So hopefully some of these issues have been addressed sort of regionally. Lots of hot trending activities for the region. I mentioned them earlier. And yeah, going a long way with the trends in terms of sustainability has been non-negotiable, and just the changes that are happening in people's sort of decision making and supply chains in terms of how that's going forward. So I think obviously all these slides are available in the portal, and I think what I was trying to give you an essence here, that the sector's alive and well. It has been through 2 years of heartache, and I think there's an increasing opportunity for the sector really to position itself. And hopefully over the next sort of 6 to 9 months, we can be working with you to really sort of push things forward. And thank you for listening to me blather on for that last sort of 15 minutes or so. Does anybody have any questions? I'm just trying to see if there's been any. Yeah, quick. Yeah, all the slides are going to be made available on the portal. And I'll send you a link just to make sure that you've still got that link. It's a wee website we've created, and that'll enable you to go in and look at the slides. And obviously the presentation, the actual live evening tonight goes online as well, and you can go back and look at that for anybody who maybe misses it. So that's me for the moment. Does anybody want to jump in with any questions at the moment or any burning issues?
I've got a wee question, if I could, Fergus. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
So it's to do with pricing.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I'm seeing a couple of, you know, messages in that presentation, and on one hand, and I'm just interested in terms of where we need to position ourselves.
Yes.
On one hand, I'm seeing, which I was kind of enthused about, you saying like, don't be afraid to, you know, price yourselves according to really what you should be priced at, and taking into consider all your costs and everything. But then at the other hand, I'm also seeing that customers are driven by value. So I guess it's trying to find that balance. And then I'm kind of like aware that we're moving into recession. Yeah. So with all that in the mix, I'm kind of wondering, like, where are we, what are folk thinking with that?
Yeah, I know that from just personal heart that what we've had to do with the businesses I've involved in, we have had to put our prices up. Otherwise, economically, it doesn't make sense. But there does come a natural sort of point, and I'm using a pizza as an example. People will not pay £16 or £18 for a pizza. So there does become a point when the mix, your margin gets eroded, but the mix of what you've got to offer over the piece maybe makes it up, and you need the volume to get there. In terms of what you're offering, what I would suggest there, we can pick this up in the one-to-one. We can have a look at other price points for other providers and just get a sense of where it's tracking. But you're right. I think one of the things that we'll have to just see what happens this year, because the energy costs are kicking in now. So people's budgets are being eroded. National insurance has been eroded. The cost of getting here in a camper van or a car is increasing as well. So when you add all that up together, is there a big part of the market that are not going to go on holiday this year because they can't afford it? Even as a staycationer, question mark, don't know. I know a wee sort of ready reckoner in Skye, we hit the same level of revenues we did in April 19 for the first time in 3 years, basically. So we're back revenue wise. May's tracking about 85% of May 19. So I would say it's maybe not as busy, and there's less people around, but they are spending a wee bit more, although our prices have gone up, but at least they're still spending. But I think, you know, that's a great point to make, and we can probably bring that up in the one-to-one in terms of helping you just sort of look at how you position your price point. I know last year, a couple of the operators, because demand was so high, they hiked their prices quite significantly. They just put their prices up by 20% and they got it because the demand was so high. They were still turning customers away. But I think this year is going to be a sort of tread carefully year because what's happening economically.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm going to hand over to Ross, if that's okay. Ross, do you want to jump in with your slides?
I think Dave might have had a question, Fergus.
Oh, sorry. Did I miss a question there?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Ross. I've actually got a little bit of thought on the last questioner, and also a different kind of fear. I originate from a country where they had probably some of the highest inflation in the world. So lots of hard-earned experience. The best advice I can give you is, if you've got to just learn how to change your prices on a daily basis, do it and keep up to date with inflation. If you've got a current operation where you're selling anything that is immediate and they're coming now, then just price it as you can right now. You're always going to run a problem the further ahead you're pricing, because people won't be able to adapt. So if I've got an awful situation right now where we're running in the hotel about a year ahead of ourselves. So they're booking as they're leaving now for next year. So now next year, of course, the prices will be huge. We know that, but we don't know how high. We don't know how bad this inflation is going to hit. There's a lot of things happening in the world that might make it even worse than what we're even predicting now. But even at the best scenario, it's going to be high. If you had to put, of course, what you envision next year's prices now, you're in for a rude awakening, because people will just say, oh, they're mad. Those people are crazy. Your metaphor of the pizza, of course, was a good one. They're not going to pay now. But in a year's time, of course, they will. But how do you promote that now for next year is your bigger problem. So the good advice there is that as it's happening, just if you put up your prices 40 times this year, each time it'll help you adapt for and absorb for next year, so that you don't make these giant decisions which are really terrifying. I know that doesn't really help, but living in an inflationary world is a tough thing.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, I think this year is going to be a challenge. It's that whole level of sort of impact. It'll just be interesting to see how it pans out, you know, across all the bits of the sector, in terms of bed nights in the region, spend in the region, and also the current challenges the regions have got in terms of, like, a lot of places are still closed 2 days a week because they don't have enough staff. So, okay, I think, have we caught everybody there? I can't see any hands up. There's no more questions. Are you okay to